Let's talk about Prince Andrew. We spent, the best part of 2 hours a couple of nights ago talking about that out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew. Let's turn to the royal broadcaster and commentator Rafe Heydel-Mankoo to reflect on some aspects of this, particularly the financial ones. Rafe, welcome to you. I think you can join us now. Actually, hey, hi, Rafe. Welcome to you. I was talking in our morning editorial meeting this morning. Let me just turn off the voices in my ear, which are becoming a fraction annoying. The financial aspect to this, Rafe, £12 million settlement. Where's the money going to come from? You've had a couple of MPs saying, well, it mustn't come from the public purse. We all nod and say amen to that, of course. 10 years ago, what was the civil list became the sovereign grant, didn't it? So you know far better than most, but as I understand it, this doesn't affect the taxpayer anymore. This comes from the Crown estate. Explain what that is.
That's right. So, well, how long have you got? I'll try and put it into its most basic form, because royal finances are quite complicated. You've got public finances, what used to be called the public purse, and then private finances, what is still called the privy purse. And it's from the privy purse that we're almost guaranteed to see that the funds come to contribute towards Prince Andrew's settlement. The public funds, as you say, used to be called the civil list. Essentially, in the olden days, the monarch had to pay all the expenses of the government, pay the civil service, pay the defence, and the funds for that used to come from the King or Queen's Crown estate. These were vast holdings in London and across the country, along the foreshore of the country as well. And the revenue from that every year would go to the Exchequer to fund things. King George III decided that it was getting too expensive to run the country, and so he voluntarily gave the revenue from the Crown estate, from his public properties, to the government, to Parliament, in exchange for the civil list. In 2012, that was changed. So now the sovereign receives what's called a sovereign grant, and the sovereign grant really is pegged to between 15% and 25% of that Crown estate. So the Crown estate every year generates around £300 million. That goes to the Treasury, and in exchange for that 300 million, the Crown gets back between 50 and 80 million pounds, depending on how much refurbishment is needed. 50 million goes for the running of the household, the operations of the Queen, travel, official travel, maintaining the properties, and currently about 30 million pounds goes for the major refurbishments of Buckingham Palace, which would need to happen anyway. Even if we didn't have a monarchy, we'd have to look after our historic buildings. So that's the sovereign grant. So really, the taxpayer doesn't pay a single penny, because the Crown is getting back 15% of the revenue that it generates every year.
Rafe, do you think the institution of monarchy have been clear enough about this? Have they set about explaining that change a decade ago to the British public clearly enough? And in particular, this idea of the Crown estate, which you so eloquently just explained to us there, is their property. It includes things like the lion's share of Regent Street in central London, for instance, that they handed that over to the state. And actually, I say handed it over, it's their money. And they now derive an income from that, which means they don't tap us taxpayers for cash.
That's right. I should say it's important to know that it's not the private property of the monarch. It's kept by the Crown as a legal entity, so it's called a corporate sole. So the Queen doesn't have any direct control. It's run like a perfectly normal business. It's got its own chairman and its own board and so forth. And none of the capital can be sold off by the sovereign. But yes, it's them. Every sovereign, when they come to the throne, they agree to surrender their rights for the revenue in exchange for, historically, the civil list, and now the sovereign grant. This was all done by Sir Michael Peat, who was the Queen's master financier at Buckingham Palace, and was precisely created to avoid the problem of Parliament having to decide how much money to give to the sovereign. This was always seen to be a very politically contentious issue. We know it's the same thing when it comes to MP salaries. No one wants to say that they deserve a pay rise. So by pegging it to a percentage of the Crown estate, which was done in a decade ago, 2012, I think it's really been able to give the monarchy a much surer footing of guaranteed income, but also avoid those awkward conversations. If you wanted to put it, though, in taxpayer terms, it only works out to about £1.69 or so per person, which is, that's less than a cup of coffee at McDonald's.
Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, thanks very much indeed for your time. Thanks a lot.